et Christus es natus, ex Maria Virgine cadete.
So welcome to another episode of the Rediscovery channel, where each week myself, Stilgor, and my good friend Ivor, we look at a different topic that the other person hopefully hasn't heard about before. And Ivor, this time it's my turn, and I want to talk about the Dacians. Have you ever heard of them before?
I've heard of the Roman province of Dacia, and I think it's named after some indigenous group that they conquered and annexed. And supposedly they're the ancestors of the Romanians, but whatever language they originally spoke is lost. And that's pretty much everything I know about them, and I'm not even sure if that's right.
Yeah, that's pretty much right. So in this video, I want to take a short, take a short time to explain who they were and some of the legacy that they left behind. It'll be a shorter video, kind of as an introduction to who they were. And I think there's some other good materials out there on the internet, but I would like this to be a good beginner video that summarizes who they are. Because to me, Dacia was really just a car brand living over here in Europe. And I was like, okay. And then later on, I heard about the Dacians as part of the Roman Empire. And I knew about, the Celts and the Germans and the Greeks and of course, other tribes that were part of the Roman Empire. But I didn't know much about the Dacians. And actually, they have quite a story. And they were actually able at one point to become a major headache for the Romans. I would say even more so than the German tribes. So yes, you're right. The Dacians, they were an ancient people who lived in the area that is now modern-day Romania and Moldova, as well as some parts of Ukraine, Serbia, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Hungary, and Poland. And they inhabited the regions characterized by the Carpathian Mountains and the Danube River. And in these mountains, they were building up these strong footholds. And most of what we've learned about them, unfortunately, is either by that we've learned from either the Greeks or the Romans, because they're, like you said, their own language and the historical context that has mostly been wiped out. But then through archaeology, we've learned a lot more about them in recent years.
Did they have a written text?
Yeah, so they did have written text, at least on coins. But as far as I know, there's no historian accounts available by themselves. So it's all through third-party historians that we know about it, like from Persians and others that write about them. So whatever they had in text, if they had it, was wiped out when they were eventually taken over and by the Romans, because they were quite strong and they put up a good fight. And what do you think the Romans did to them?
Is that a question or?
Yeah. They were, So, I mean, typically what the Romans would do if somebody put up a fight is they would not answer kindly and be like, okay, we beat you now we can be friends. That's not typically how the Romans reacted.
Wasn't that how they reacted with the Greeks, though? Like, they admired the Greeks, and then after they conquered them, they still kept admiring them and imitating them?
That's a good point. That is a good point. Is that maybe because they admired them so much, or I wonder if we have any listeners that can maybe talk to that. Like, why did maybe the Greeks just didn't put up as much of a fight as some of these other peoples did, and also the Greeks were subjugated early on in the Roman Empire. And with the period I'm talking about now of the Dacians is the period of the 5 good emperors, which started with, let me see, Trajan. And actually it was the one emperor before him, Nerva, I think it is. He led the first campaign against the Dacians. And then Trajan, of course, he was the one that expanded the Roman Empire to its furthest borders. A very successful warlord. He is the one who in the end managed to wipe out the Dacians. But let's go back a little bit further back about who they were. So they had they were stuck in these they were living in these mountains, the Carpathian Mountains, where they had all these natural fortresses and footholds, and which allowed them to, first of all, they were able to build a lot of weaponry. So more about that later, which made them a huge threat to the Romans because they were able to create swords called fracs, I think they're called. I have in my notes later on, which were like these curved iron metal swords who could slice through the Roman body armor easily. And then they were a warrior class, so their society was actually structured in distinct classes. So they had a nobility class, they had a priesthood class, peasants and artisans, and the artisans would make all kinds of metal based jewelry as well as weapons. And then they had a warrior class as well.
That's kind of like Hinduism, where they had a priestly class, a warrior class, and a working class. And then later on, they divided the working class between like the skilled labor and unskilled labor. With the skilled labor, I think they called them Vaisyas, and the unskilled labor was Sudras. There is also a racial component to that as well. Anyways.
But these people, they had a lot of blacksmiths among the artisans, because they had so these 4 classes. So they had excellent weapons, including these steel swords that could they were like very sharp and strong for the time. And then they also had these trained warriors that would use all these kinds of ambushes and knew the terrain like the back of their hand. Anyway, the Dacians, they worshipped deities like Zelmoxis, and they believed in immortality, which was influenced by their interactions with the neighboring Scythians. They also had cultural exchanges with neighboring Thracians, Greeks, and Celts, which they blended all those traditions together to build this unique blend of traditions and practices. So they had, like I said before, they had impressive fortifications, particularly their capital city, Sarmizegetusa Regia, and I'm butchering this, located in the Oresti Mountains. So this was a city of marvel and of strategic planning and architectural prowess. I'll include some pictures. There's not too much left of it, unfortunately. But they had fortresses that were built to withstand sieges and to protect the Dacian people from the invaders. Now, there was this king called Decibellus, who was the last king of Dacia. He was a formidable leader who resisted Roman conquest. This is what we know most about the Dacians is through his wars with the Roman emperors, Domitian and Trajan. So, and the first Dacian war was from 85 to 89 after AD. So when Decibellus came to power, In 85, he immediately organized an army and attacked the Roman province of Mucia, killing its governor. And then in the following years, he annihilated a Roman army under Cornelius Fuscus, Domitian's Praetorian prefect. And he was actually able to lure them over the Danube River. And there was a whole legion that went in over Plantum Ridges, and pretty much none of them returned. So just like Arminius, who took out 2 legions, Decabellus took out an entire legion. Later on, though, there was another army surrounded, which was like one of the largest armies at the time, 100,000 people. And they were able to bring like all these engineers in. It's like some of the best from all over the Roman Empire, and they were able to defeat Decabellus. But he was still able to create this favorable peace treaty, because they were never able to subjugate him completely, and he still had his fortresses in the mountains. And through this peace treaty, he actually got an annual subsidy of the Romans, and also he was able to get Roman engineers to help fortify his kingdom. So this was like on paper, he was now like his allegiance was with the Romans, but in reality, he was scheming and preparing for another war with the Romans. And using all these Roman engineers to build like massive fortifications around his kingdom. However, in 101 AD, Trajan, so Emperor Trajan, the first of the 5 good Roman emperors, as they're called, which ended with Augustus. He led a massive invasion of Dacia, and the Roman army consisted of 16 legions, so around 200,000 people, the largest army ever.
Wait, Stilgar, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think the guy that's considered the last of the good emperors is Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, that's who I meant. Sorry. Yeah.
Octavius Augustus was the first official Roman emperor.
Yes, I meant Marcus Aurelius. So it was Trajan. Then it was. Do you have them listed there, or?
I don't.
Okay,
I don't know them all, actually. I just know that he was considered, and after him comes Pompus.
Well, I should know the one who came after Trajan. That was actually Herodotus, because I visited his wall. No, Hadrian. Hadrian was the one after, and I went to visit his wall in Scotland this summer on vacation.
Oh man.
And I saw whatever like parts of the Hadrian Wall, which is pretty cool. There's like this whole fortress there, and some of the people that were stationed there were Dacians as mercenaries, and Frisians, which is cool. So Frisians are, I want to do a video about the Frisians as well. Let us know if you'd like to learn more, but they're in my country. And they're like part of the ancestors, and they're kind of like part of the Scandinavian world, very tightly. Like they were kind of like the Dutch Vikings. Anyway, I could do a whole video about them. But they were also there as just like the Dacians. They fought very strongly against the Romans, and then as soon as they were subjugated because of their military prowess, they were used as mercenaries throughout the Roman Empire. So along Hadrian's Wall, there were like all these Dacian settlements, and apparently they put in all these bread ovens, which I thought was interesting. So I don't know if people in Romania are particularly fond of bread.
Bread was very important in the ancient world.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's one of the. It was basically what kept the Roman Empire together. So
It's in the yeah, they use like Egypt was the bread basket, you know, and of course in the New Testament it says, "Give us this day our daily bread." So it's almost like people ate bread daily. Actually, they
yeah,
did eat bread much daily.
it was the main staple that people would eat. And I think because if you couldn't have like bread, you would have to eat like I believe it was rye, if I'm not mistaken.
You can also make
Uh,
rye bread too.
yeah,
It's
but there,
disgusting. I don't like
I
it.
think there was a problem with rye. Was like at the time, like sometimes they would get this, you would get this fungus in it, and you could get poisoned by it, and it was like a extremely horrible death with like hallucinations and like
Ah,
yeah. So they really were like that was one of the reasons that when well, anyway, we're going off topic here. Why the Egypt was so important to them for the
yeah.
Roman Empire because it allowed them to always have fresh grain bread available throughout the empire. So when they lost it, it was a huge blow. Um, anyways, so Trajan, so the greatest, like the person that built the largest Roman Empire ever. The one before Hadrian, who built, he was like, okay, this is enough. We should try to just consolidate what we have, and that's why he built that wall there, right between England and Scotland. But he launched a huge attack with like 200,000 people, like engineers. They laid a huge siege on the capital, cutting off its water supply and systematically destroying its fortifications. I think they built a bridge and they even they built a canal just for this, and they carved like a route through the mountains that I'm pretty sure is still there, just to be able to attack the Dacians. And then finally, in 106 AD, they were defeated, and Decebalus, refusing to be captured, um, instead he committed suicide in 106 AD.
Hmm.
Because otherwise he would have to be like he would be paraded around in Rome, um, as which would have been completely humiliating. And I don't know. I think I have some more of the notes in it about that later on, but there is still like a pillar, like a triumph. What was it called?
Um,
Uh,
the arch.
yeah, so there's like a Trajan inside Rome. I've never been to Rome. I'd love to go sometime. But there's like a victory arch of Trajan victory arch, which still has the carvings explaining like how he beat the Dacians. So I'll complete like some pictures in the slide. Maybe if somebody has been there, they could tell us a little bit more about it. I'd love to go to Rome someday. Anyway, yeah. So back to the story. Um, so after this, a lot of Roman soldiers were stationed inside what is now Romania. Um, and yeah, here. So yeah. Um, but Decebalus was like the still like a well-known figure within their history. And at the Danube River, there's still a modern tribute to his legacy. It's the largest mountain or sculpture inside Europe. It's a view of Decebalus carved into a mountainside overlooking the Danube River. So it's the largest sculpture in Europe. I'll include some pictures in the video. It looks like something straight out of Lord of the Rings.
So the Romanians, they consider this guy to be a folk hero still to this day.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So now we know there's at least two Romanian heroes that are pretty big. There's this guy,
Yeah,
Decebalus. And
And
then
there's a
Vlad Dracul.
saint, yeah, among the Ottomans, there was a saint as well. That's like the main saint. Actually, I'd like to do a story about him sometime also. So, yeah. So yeah. But let me see if I have anything else. I think that's mostly what I had around him. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh yeah, and some of the aftermath. So the Dacians were they were completely subjugated. Then a lot of Romans were sent into what is nowadays Romania. Go figure. Something they're also proud of. A lot of Romanians. And what the funny fact is that like roughly 66% of the modern day Romanian language is it's actually Latin or Pig Latin, what the soldiers spoke. And with that, they're actually close the most Latin language out of all the Latin languages in the world. So more Latin.
There's some Slavic influence on
yeah, they have Slavic influence. Like for yes, they say da. Go figure. But so they have Slavic influence as well as I think some French as well as their original language. There's some leftovers as well. But yeah, if you hear like apparently Romanians can understand Italians really well. They can understand Spanish people. I've been watching some videos, and they can even understand like Latin when it's read to them, like old school Latin. So
I bet you the difference between Romanian and Vulgar Latin is like the difference between modern English and Middle Period English. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking. Kind of like the Middle Period English of Chaucer, not early Middle Period, but like the way that Canterbury Tales was written. Because I can read. I just read like the opening sequence for Canterbury Tales in the Middle Period English. The rest of it was all in English, modern English. But it's like I could understand a lot of it, but and some of the words were completely alien, but I was able to infer some of them because of context clues. It's like more archaic than King James English, which is really technically still considered modern English. It's like a lot of people today that don't know anything. You ask them what's Old English, they'll say King James is Old English. Old English is a completely different. Like Old English is totally unintelligible to modern English. Like you wouldn't understand a word. Maybe you would, because you know all these different languages already. But the average English speaker wouldn't understand a single word. Yeah, I've seen some of those videos, Stilgar, where they get people from like Romania and Italy and Spain and have them say a phrase to each other, and they'll ask them like, what did that mean? I saw one video that was really weird where they had like a Lithuanian guy and a Sanskrit speaker, and they were giving each other phrases like, and then, okay, what does it mean? And the weird thing is that they were actually able to understand each other a little bit too. But yeah, that's I mean, Romania is an interesting place. In case anybody, for our audience, so the Romanian is considered a Romance language because it's derived from Latin, and there's quite a few languages derived from Latin. So Romanian is one. Then there's Italian, Catalonian, French, Occitan, Portuguese, Galician, and there's actually another language called Aragonese. So technically, there's the language that we call Spanish today is actually Castilian, and there was another language called Aragonese, which is still spoken in a few small pockets, and Catalonian is also indigenous to Spain, and I think there's yet another language, but it's fallen out of use. But basically, all these languages, they come from the Vulgar Latin, which was the last stage of Latin before the Roman Empire broke to pieces, or at least the Western Roman Empire. And I think Latin was actually contiguously spoken from Dacia to Italy in the lands between those, but there was other groups like Germanic and Slavic groups that came and settled, and Romania got isolated from those other groups. But yeah, like what you said about the Roman soldiers moving in, that's kind of what happened in Spain and Portugal. Of course, it wasn't called Spain and Portugal back then, but it was Romanized by the Roman soldiers just moving in and settling there. And then, of course, Latin is the official language. So gradually, everybody needs to learn it in order to deal with the government. And none of the indigenous languages of Spain managed to survive, except for Basque. And I guess Basque survived because it's so different. Like it's not even part of the Indo-European family. It's completely unrelated to everything around it. So,
Oh, that's cool. You should do a video about the Basques.
yeah, I it might be worth it. I don't know much about them. You know, I've been to Spain,
All the
but I
more
didn't.
reason to do a video about them, so you can learn a bit more about them and then share it with me.
Yeah,
I don't know much about them either. Hardly
I
anything,
know that.
except that they are. I think they're always a pain in the butt to Spanish people or to,
Well,
to
yeah,
the
but
government. Yeah.
that's right. But they didn't ask for Spain to rule over them.
No,
And
no. But they
so,
want to be independent. I
yeah,
always thought it was a nice example of hypocrisy because we're always talking about the democracy and how people should be free and independent, and then but then when it comes to Spain and the Basques, then it's like, oh yeah, but not over there. We don't
also
want them to be independent and have their own say. Like, oh, boy, they were going to have a referendum. How dare they have a referendum and vote about their own future? The criminals. And I thought it was so funny,
yeah,
like the hypocrisy of it all. So, but yeah,
that also happened in Catalonia, where they did have a referendum, and then like the Spanish police came in to beat them up.
yeah.
Of course, the one thing about the Catalonian independence movement that was kind of dumb is they wanted to secede from Spain, but then turn around and join the EU. Like
Yeah,
that's the
but
dumbest.
I mean that's also what Ireland, like I think Northern Ireland, there's been talks about it as well. So, but yeah, I mean, there, I think, I mean,
There's a
I don't
lot
know.
of cuckoldry in Western Europe.
I mean,
Like
there's the EU is also something different now than it was started out to be. So,
the
uh,
United States wasn't really it was something different when it started out than what it became. Like it originally the states were supposed to be sovereign. Like it was an alliance of states, and the
yeah,
state government had more power than the federal government, depending on what state you're in. But then after we had the Civil War, they decided that no, you can't. You're actually not a sovereign state, and no, you can't leave once you join. So, and like anybody that's in Puerto Rico that is thinking about joining the United States, you should bear that in mind because according to our government, once you join, you can't unjoin. So
I
the
mean,
decision is yeah. So
I think
that's why
that's a natural way how things go though. Even the Netherlands, as small as we are, used to be the United States of the Netherlands. There would be the different provinces, and they would all have their own they would have like as much freedom as the states had in the early days of the United States, if not more. And then before, at some point, of course, the power centralizes because yeah, that's what power does. But
and the more centralized the power is, so like and the more
the
physical
further away
area
it is
they
from the people, and
exactly
the less influence you have over your own future. Yeah.
yeah, it's a recurring tragedy. That's why it's better not to join these kind of big things if
Yeah,
you
that's
can
why
help it.
the Swiss were smart enough not to join the EU. because they know that even their tiny country, they have all these different localized places where they vote on things. So the decisions are made closely by the people that get impacted by them. And,
They
that's
also
how it should be.
they managed to stay out of World War II, and I think did they also stay out of World War One?
I think so. Yeah.
That's smart. I wish my country was run that way instead of the way it is run.
The world would probably have been a better place if the U.S. had stayed out of World War One.
Yeah,
The Germans would have just won that war, and then that would have been it. We would have had all the misery afterwards. That was a direct result of the Treaty of Versailles, and how that's like screwed over the Germans. So yeah.
I think, one of the big historical drives of the German people, regardless of what kind of government they have, is that they want a warm water port. Like that's what I keep seeing over and over again from them. Like even with the Holy Roman Empire, where they had annexed northern Italy, so they want a port that it comes out into the Mediterranean, or just a warmer climate. And I think that's the main reason historically.
And there's also Germans they have also gotten screwed a lot by the UK and the French, because they always get scared of Germany getting too powerful, and then they instigate things similar to what has happened to Russia as well. But I think we're going a little bit far off topic.
Yeah, we are.
But these Romanians, there's about 10 million Romanians living today. And I'd love to actually go there sometime. I've been watching some videos of their capital, which has 2 million people, and it actually looks really nice. And Bucharest, and I would love to go there sometime and just go on vacation, because it feels like Europe from the 90s, Western Europe from the 90s. It just looks so peaceful and safe, and it feels European. I've been watching this guy on YouTube, this American that moved there. I was like, yeah, man. I mean, why not? Except it gets apparently super hot there in the summer. But at some point, I'd love to give it a visit, and maybe, yeah.
Probably doesn't get worse than Georgia, where I live. U.S. state Georgia, where you used to also live.
Yeah.
You'd probably be okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my story of this week. I think there's a lot of good videos out there. I encourage you to have a look. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of written language resources available, but we do know more now about the Dacians than we did just not too long ago. So I hope you learned something new today. If you like what we're doing, please give us a like and let us know what you'd like to hear more about. I think with that, I'd like to say thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.
All right, good one. Great, man.